Murdaugh sentenced to serve 2 life terms back-to-back for the murders of his wife Maggie and son Paul. The judge calling this one of the most troubling cases he's ever seen. Lashing out at Murdaugh, a former lawyer, for the tangled web of lies he admits telling, including about his own alibi, changing his story at the last minute after video put him at the murder scene.
But within your own soul, you have to deal with that. And I know you have to see Paul and Maggie during the night times when you're attempting to go to sleep. I'm sure they come and visit you. I'm sure.
All day and every night.
As for Murdaugh, he's still insisting that he is not guilty.
I respect this court, but I'm innocent. I would never, under any circumstances, hurt my wife Maggie, and I would never, under any circumstances, hurt my son Paul.
Murdaugh's lawyers say they will appeal his conviction all the way to the Supreme Court if that's what it takes. Let's bring in Bob Bianchi, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor. Bob, I look at this whole concept here and I think that you know, Murdaugh saying, I didn't do this, still maintaining his innocence. It kind of goes toward the appeal. Here's defense attorney Dick Harpootlian after sentencing, and I'll get your response.
Not our job to find the real killer. If they had taken fingerprints, if they gotten footprints, if they hadn't destroyed, if they preserved Maggie's phone with her GPS, they misrepresented to the grand jury that they had a shirt with his blood on it. It was a comedy of errors in terms of forensics on this. So do I have faith that they would find the real killer? No.
Of course, he's already laying the groundwork for the appeal here. Bob, your thoughts?
Yeah, so, I mean, he's bringing out the statements about the footprints and the investigative errors, and there were errors in this case. That's not going to be a great appellate issue. The appellate issue that's at play here from every homicide prosecutor, including myself, was the introduction of the character evidence, they call it, or 404B evidence. That evidence is what they call, that rule is a rule of exclusion, Trace, which means you just can't go to trial and beat somebody up that they're a bad person and they're no good, therefore they must be guilty of this crime. However, there are exceptions to that rule. For example, if the evidence goes towards motive. The government argued that all the previous financial crimes with his clients should be admitted as the motive as to why it is he killed his son and his wife. Now, that's really on the line, but the judge allowed it in. I think what most of us found problematic, and this isn't whether you like Murdaugh, don't like Murdaugh, we're just talking about law here, is that courts are very, very reluctant, appellate courts, to allow just beating somebody up on character. And when this evidence was being introduced, I took specific note of the fact that the prosecutors did exactly what the rule says you shouldn't do. They basically said to each witness, well, now that you know that he stole from you, now that you know he stole from the firm, how does that make you feel about him? Oh, I think he's a terrible person. I don't think he's a good guy. I think they went over the line. Trace, it's hard to be judicious, but I, as a prosecutor, had many cases where I had 404 evidence that was allowed to be admitted, and I actually pulled back from that so it wouldn't get reversed.
It's a fair point. And one of the jurors, you're talking about how they felt about this, and one of the jurors was on ABC this morning and said this, watch.
He never cried.
He never cried. What do you mean by that?
All he did was blow snot.
Did you not see tears?
No tears.
How did you know he wasn't crying?
Because I saw his eyes. I was this close to him.
In other words, it was all an act. What are your final thoughts, Bob, on the fact that he took the stand? In hindsight, was it a good move for the defense?
No, it was a terrible move because that juror basically indicated, I believe it was the juror that you just played, that they were actually 2 jurors that thought he was innocent and 1 juror that was on the fence. It was his testimony that they were able to persuade those 3 jurors to say that he was lying to them, especially with respect to the video from the kennel, that eventually pushed them to go over to guilty verdict. So that juror indicated that they thought he was a liar. They thought that his career showed that he was a liar, and they used his testimony against him to convince those 3 jurors. I don't think Murdaugh really cared one way or the other. He got on that witness stand and admitted to 600 years of financial crimes. He knows he's never getting out. He was going to take that stand even against his lawyer's advice so that he could still tell people, I'm an innocent person wrongly convicted. I think he was going to take the stand irrespective.
And I got to go, and I got about 10 seconds for you, Bob. But, you know, we talk about this every night on Fox News at Night, which is a great show you should watch every once in a while, Bob. It's one of those things where that kennel video, when the voice was on the kennel video, it was over. Final thoughts.
Yeah, final thoughts is that there was a dispute about whether it was his voice or not, but when he got on the stand, to the point you just raised before, he clinched it 100% by admitting, yes, that's my voice. That's the timeline the prosecutor needed.
Bob Bianchi, great to have you on. Thank you, sir.